It's a bitter pill to swallow.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Bitter Pill. Happy Halloween. My name is Kirk Sheppard. I am your host, a therapist who's bringing you mental health content mixed with a hybrid of professional wrestling overlay. And today we actually are going to do both.
It's a bitter pill to swallow.
We have not been doing as much wrestling lately, and I felt a little bad about that, so I thought I would get back in the saddle on some of the wrestling content. So let's do it.
Pull back the curtain, tell them how it's done, but don't ruin the illusion, 'cause that ain't no fun.
For those of you that don't remember, kayfabe is the term that we use in the professional wrestling business that explains or warns the people in the business that someone outside the business is nearby. So if two guys are talking about their match and a fan walks by, one of them might yell, kayfabe, which means shut up, there's an outsider here. It's an old carnival term. And I use it here on this broadcast to peel back the curtain and take a look at some of the secrets of professional wrestling storytelling and psychology. And usually it has something to do with what we're going to talk about later on in the show. So if you're not a wrestling fan, stick with this because I think you'll find it interesting. And we're going to get into the book club stuff about my book, Soul Audit, in just a minute. Today we wanted to talk, though, about the babyface in peril. It's a common thing that happens in a professional wrestling match. The babyface, of course, is the good guy. And when he is in a match, typically the heel, the bad guy, is at some point in charge of the match and in control of the babyface's fate. The babyface is in danger. It's classic storytelling where it creates a sense of the good guy is not going to be able to beat the bad guy, and we invest in his eventual comeuppance. Now, why do we do that? Well, in wrestling, we refer to the things that help us do that as selling. That's the thing the babyface is doing when they are showing that they are hurt. But they can't only sell. They must also, at some point, give us a hope spot. That's when they fight back. Now, I would argue that babyfaces should always fight back. So when they are getting beaten up by the bad guy, at the beginning of that, they should be fighting back more. Bad guy is cheating to cut him off, to take back control. And then at some point, the babyface is really defeated, but never dead. The babyface can never just stop fighting. He has to show signs of life. And if you watch classic great babyfaces like Ricky Morton of the Rock and Roll Express or Shawn Michaels, you will see that pretty much, at least in their early days, Ricky Steamboat, they never stopped giving us hope. So babyfaces should always fight back, but they also need to show us vulnerability, which will lead us into our book club topic in just a minute. If the babyface doesn't sell the pain, if they don't show vulnerability, we won't buy the comeback. We won't buy them coming back out of that pain. They have to show weakness. They have to make us feel for them. Why does that work? Well, because as Brene Brown says, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, vulnerability is the birthplace of connection. And so for us to believe in that babyface and root for him and want him to win, we have to see him suffer. We have to see him at his weakest moment. We connect to effort, not invincibility. It's why I prefer Batman over Superman. I prefer superheroes that are human or have weakness or flaw over Superman, whose only weakness is manufactured through kryptonite. Not seeing struggle is what kills connections. I didn't realize that the slide was going to be hidden by my big head. But that says not seeing the struggle is what kills the connection. So what are our takeaways from this from a wrestling psychology standpoint? If you're a wrestler or a wrestling fan, if you never saw the pain, no one believes the victory. We have to believe that you're in danger for us to care. Never no-sell your emotions. This is a takeaway for you in real life, everybody. Don't no-sell your emotions. Don't go poker faced. There are some rare occasions where you being poker faced and not showing your emotions might be in your best interest, but rarely. Instead, you should sell the emotion. You should show how you feel. You should be vulnerable. Take the hit and let people see you get back up. That's how we connect. Well, this is going to be tied to our book club where we're reading my book, Soul Audit. So let's get to it.
It's the Bitter Book Club. It's the Bitter Book Club. Book Club.
Today's topic is one of my favorite things to talk about. One of the things I talk about the most in my office. It's the idea of shame and vulnerability. Straight out of the chapters 9 and 10 from my book, The Voice in My Head Isn't Even Mine. And chapter 10, This Might Hurt a Little. Let's get right to it. So, the big idea of this lesson today. Shame is the fear of disconnection. If you really knew me, you wouldn't like me. And vulnerability is the birthplace of connection. So the way to counteract shame is through vulnerability. We'll talk about both of those terms at length today, whenever you're watching this. I was in first grade Sunday school, and my Sunday school teacher told us, collectively as a class, that if we did not close our eyes when we prayed, our prayers didn't count. I've never forgotten that. Even then, I thought it was stupid, but I still remember it. And it makes me wonder, what other lessons was I taught, either consciously or subconsciously, that I have absorbed into my being? I like that one. What rules do I follow that I have absorbed because someone told me? Or what things about myself have I learned over time that maybe aren't true? Who knows what messages we have absorbed about things like what's right and wrong, or who we are, or where our value comes from. But I can assure you that many of us, through the work that I've done anecdotally, have gotten the message that we're not good enough, that we should hide parts of ourselves because people won't like us if we show it. And that is what shame is. Shame begins when you're told that you're lovable when you're good. Shame is when you're told you're lovable only when you're good. But we're not puppies. We're not training people to go outside to use the bathroom. We're training people to be fully human and to be able to make mistakes to learn from them and to be able to be all the dimensions that a person is: good, bad, indifferent. Now, some people get guilt and shame confused. I think that guilt repairs while shame freezes us. I think guilt is behavior focused and shame is identity based. And guilt can be helpful if it keeps us from making the same mistake again. But the only good thing I've found that comes from shame is that we keep our clothes on. And I'm not even entirely sure that's always a good thing either. A lot of people come to me who have a hard time enjoying intimate moments because of lessons they learned about purity culture, for instance, or about their bodies. Shame really doesn't have much use in the real world in a productive way. It's a valuable tool if you're trying to manipulate and harm, but it's not a great tool if you're trying to, again, create fully formed, functional, wonderful human beings. Now, vulnerability is when we are open, when we are allowing ourselves to be seen, when we express ourselves fully without fear of what people might think. Now, I could walk through the worst part of Cincinnati at 3 o'clock in the morning with a box of money in my hands naked, and I would be extremely vulnerable, and that would be foolish, because vulnerability without boundaries is also dangerous. I want to make sure that's clear. Vulnerability without boundaries is dangerous. But vulnerability isn't confession or oversharing. I remember a time when I was in Bible college and they would have these Wednesday night family services, they called them, where they would encourage the student body to go up to the microphone and confess their sins publicly in front of everybody. And I was always creeped out by that. I thought that was the weirdest idea. Partly because I had been taught very early on to hide all of my flaws, to never show somebody my weaknesses, to never talk about things that were scandalous in public, to never talk about money in public. Those are lessons that I inherited and learned early on. So I was always weirded out by the idea of people publicly revealing themselves. And unfortunately, I think that while that might have been, those moments might have been well intended by somebody, what they ended up being was a way for others to have power and control over people. By getting you to tell us the things you've done wrong, we now have power over you because now we know your shame spots. And it didn't make people more connected in that culture. It made people more, well, at least I'm better than they are. I've never done that. And it was just unhealthy in general. Vulnerability is when we choose to be seen when we can't control the outcome. When I come on here every single week and tell stories about my life, and when I present to you material that you may find stupid or silly or dumb, or you might think my kayfabe segment was ridiculous, or you might think my voice sounds silly, or that I talk too fast. And those things may be true, maybe not be true. Point is, I can't control what you think. And I'm going to come anyway and share this because I think that it's valuable. And I have found that the connections that I'm making through the podcast are much more valuable and much more important than any criticism that I might get. Now, that doesn't mean that I have the comments turned on YouTube. They are turned off, so I don't see them. And you can only comment on my Substack if you pay. But you could be in the Patreon over for the good brothers, and you could say whatever you wanted. And it would be very hurtful maybe to me, but I am vulnerably opening myself up to the feedback and the criticism. Luckily, there's not very many comments, and when they are, they're actually very positive, which is very nice. But vulnerability is when we choose to be seen, even though we can't control the outcome. So why is that? Let's talk about that for a second. Why is that important? Why is it a good idea to let ourselves be seen? Because Brene Brown, in all of her research, and I will put a link to her TED Talk in all the places that I post this, on shame and vulnerability, because it's really where I learned the foundations of these ideas. But Brene Brown says that shame, or that vulnerability, is the birthplace of connection, and that is the secret to wholehearted living, which is what she found helps to heal the wounds of shame. When people hide themselves, parts of themselves, and they avoid being open and connecting fully, they do damage, and they're depressed, and they're anxious, and they're sad, and they're lonely. But when they allow themselves to be seen fully, when they allow themselves to connect with safe people, something changes in them, and they become wholehearted livers. They love life, and they live it to its fullest extent, and it's very powerful. So how do you do that? Well, we start small, right? We name what we're feeling first to ourselves. Once we've identified the feeling, we can then choose someone safe and say the honest thing to them. And then we don't rush to clean it up. Sometimes it's about confronting somebody about something they've done that hurt you, a partner or a friend or a parent who's done something that makes you feel bad. And for you to say, that felt icky. I'm going to choose to tell them in a non-confrontational way how it felt. I'm going to say it honestly to them. And then I'm not going to rush to make them feel better because they may have their own feelings about what I said. That's vulnerability. But vulnerability can also be being brave enough to go ahead and call and make that doctor's appointment that you're anxious about, that you aren't sure what might happen when you get those test results. Vulnerability might be saying, I love you first. Vulnerability might be doing a podcast and putting it out in the universe and wondering if people are going to like it. We can practice it in many, many ways. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's strength without the armor. I think it's one of the bravest things you can do. And a lot of people, especially men, were taught early on in their lives that vulnerability is a sign of weakness. That if you see me emoting, you see me crying, you see me weak, you're going to think I'm a weakling. But in professional wrestling, I can tell you that the babyfaces who got over the most, the people we wanted to see win, the heroes we cheered the most for, were the ones who let us see their weaknesses. And they fought back anyway. And we connected with that story. And we connected with that character. And I promise that wrestling is a mirror for real life. And if you show your weaknesses and you show people your vulnerabilities and you let them in, you will connect more fully, more authentically, and life will be better as a result. Here's our soul audit for the week. I assume I'm in trouble when someone says, "Can we talk?" Or I over-apologize for existing. Those are shame-based. I present a polished version of myself in order to stay safe. But how about if I can tell when my inner voice is shame and not truth, or I've taken small risks to be seen just as I am? This week, when your inner critic speaks, I want you to pause. Ask yourself, is this voice mine or someone else's? And then replace that critic with kindness, with empathy, with patience, with time. The acronym KEPT is one that I came up with one of my clients when we were talking about ways to interact more successfully with his partner. Kindness, empathy, patience, and time. All she was asking for from him was kindness, empathy, patience, and time with him. He would get frustrated whenever she would reach out. And sometimes I understood it because the reach out can be a little aggressive, or it can be a little much, a little needy. But when he would lean in with kindness, empathy, patience, and time, when he led with curiosity and not assumption of attack, their relationship improved. Here's our takeaway for today. You're not broken for having shame. I think everyone has an element of shame. Some of us have more than others. You're actually brave when you can name it as what it is, when you call it what it is and say, "This is shame. I'm not going to live under this shame umbrella any longer." And you speak with your own voice, even if it shakes, even if you're scared, even if you're afraid that people are going to shut you out and disconnect. Well, you're practicing alignment, which is the whole point of the book, and the whole point of this process, and you're going to be more fully living in relationship with people in healthy ways. I would tell you that if people reject you when you show them who you really are, those people were not your friends to begin with anyway. And so while it will be sad to let them go, sometimes that's the best thing you could ever do. Next week, we're going to talk about grief and loss, so we'll talk about how to do that, because there are people in our lives who just have to go sometimes as part of the alignment process. And so we'll learn how to do that more successfully next week right here on The Bitter Pill. Hope that you're doing well. Hope that Halloween's going well. Hope that you have trick-or-treaters coming and you're nice to them. Or if you have kids and you're trick-or-treating, or you yourself are going to a Halloween party, I hope you have a good time. I think I'm going to be at Halloween Haunt at Kings Island tonight, just for a little bit at least, just to say I did it on Halloween. And that'll be fun. Missed out on seeing the Good Brothers when they were in Chillicothe because basically Machine Gun said, "Don't come." He's going to be around, hopefully in the area a little bit longer soon. So hopefully I'll get to see him. Maybe we can record some content together. That'd be fun. Anyway, for those of you who are not wrestling fans, thanks for putting up with the kayfabe segment today. For those of you who are more wrestling fans, hope that was helpful to keep you engaged. And for those of you who are just here seeking whatever truths you can find, I hope that today you walked away feeling a little bit better about learning how to be authentic and open and vulnerable and letting go of your shame. And we'll see you next time right here on The Bitter Pill.
It's a bitter pill to swallow.
The Bitter Pill with Kirk Sheppard is part of the Talk and Shop media empire. The preceding video was produced as educational and entertainment content only. Kirk Sheppard is a licensed mental health therapist. However, the material on this broadcast should not be considered clinical or representative of his professional work in that context.
It's a bitter pill to swallow.
Professor Bitterman is a fictional character and may not reflect his actual views and opinions. For more content from Kirk Sheppard, go to kirksheppard.com. Follow him on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe to his Substack and YouTube channels.
Please subscribe to the Talk and Shop podcast on YouTube for more content from the Good Brothers.